Okay, welcome back. We're in the second of this series about Paul being in Athens to help you, the sports minister, to figure out how you do your evangelistic disciple making. Remember, Paul wasn't preaching anywhere like he was in Philippi and Thessaloniki where he got in trouble. He's in Athens just going to the marketplace and just dialoguing with people, entering into personal relationships with people. Now, in your 8th slide in the series, you're going to see this hall, this home of the philosophers. In verse 18 of chapter 17 of Acts, you'll see that it says, and Stoic philosophers were conversing with him. You see, these Stoic philosophers were founded by Zeno about 300 years before. And the name of Stoa, that's those pillars that you see down the picture, were there because it represented architecturally what Stoics were supposed to do. Get in line, hold it up, be strong, practice virtue. And Zeno taught that the first lesson was, in fact, to practice virtue. And that the virtue one had to have virtue, one had to have knowledge, and this came from your senses. And so since senses only respond to material, the only things that were real were material. So this is how he envisioned God, materially. And although God was loving, he was seen in nature. They also believed that all human beings would be absorbed back into God, the soul of the universe. Sounds very Hindu in our day. And they were, like Hindus today, pantheists, meaning pan, all, theist, gods, all gods. Everything's God. You're God, I'm God, everything's God. Well, you can begin to see how some of these philosophies were taken, but just are not Christian. And we find in verse 18, they are saying about Paul and his dialogues, what will this babbler say? This is a picture now in the 9th screen there about, this was the public restrooms where a lot of the men would go to hang out. And this is where they would talk about these things. And outside of this, there were little birds that would go around and pick up various seeds. And really this word of babbler, a belittling statement, was the word for seed picker, like that little bird that was there in Athens. In other words, they were saying, Paul's not very sophisticated. He only picks up a little seed of truth here and there, and they try to go out and do things. He tries to go out and do things with it. Well, he seemed to be a proclaimer of former gods, of foreign gods, rather. Now, why would it foreign? Because he said about Jesus and the resurrection. They thought resurrection was a god. And the Greeks were used to a multiplicity of gods. And so therefore, their paradigm, they heard Paul announcing two gods. Kind of like impersonal gods like light and love. You see in the 10th slide there that the lighting of the sacred Olympic torches, and again, these gods that are envisioned and they're worshipped, and all is God and everybody's God. But they took him up to Mars Hill. And here we are, my wife and I, sitting on Mars Hill, the Areopagus, Acts 17:19. And here I'm actually preaching right there. And they said, we are unable to know what this new teaching is that is spoken by you, Paul. We don't get it. Verse 20, for you bring certain strange things to our ears. We would know what these things mean. And so they invited him up. And we have to remember as sports ministers that often our Christianese is not easy for people to understand. We have to use words they know. This is a modern example for us, that we have to figure out ways to get people to know the gospel. And so the 13th and 14th slides that you'll see, he says in verse 21, now all Athenians and dwelling strangers, have leisure for nothing different, either to say or to hear something newer. Well, what you're seeing is what Paul is trying to say. I became all things to all men, that I might win some. This is really the lesson that needs to be learned here from us. And this is Mars Hill. We need to go to our Mars Hill and figure out how to get our message to those pagan people, just like Paul did. I found an altar which was inscribed to an unknown God. Can I tell you what that God is? My prayer is that you will be able to go to the people that don't know God and teach them about the God that can be known, just like Paul did in Athens. Thanks for joining us here on the AGON Institute of Sports Ministry.